They tore my boarding pass right at the gate, shredding my place in this family along with it. I stood abandoned at the terminal, penniless, and watching my mother walk away without a single backward glance. That was when a stranger with dangerous eyes leaned in and whispered a lie that would burn their world down. He told me to pretend to be his fiancée. I did not know if I was being saved or weaponized, but I said yes. My name is Ruth Hansen. I am 31 years old, and for the last decade, I have made a living bringing dead things back to life. My studio in Seattle smells of linseed oil, beeswax, and the specific dusty patience required to restore a chipped Louis Vuitton trunk from 1910 or a water-damaged Hermes Kelly bag. I understand value. I understand how to look at something that appears ruined, see the structural integrity beneath the damage, and painstakingly coax it back to its former glory. It is a solitary profession. It requires silence. It requires respect for the object. Unfortunately, my family operates on the exact opposite principles. They are loud, they are careless, and they do not believe in restoration. They believe in replacement. We were standing in the Delta check-in line at SeaTac International Airport. It was 7:45 in the morning, a time that felt offensive to my internal clock. But my mother, Darlene Hansen, insisted that early flights were for serious travelers. The trip was ostensibly for her 60th birthday, a milestone she had been weaponizing for the better part of 6 months. We were going to Milan, or rather, they were going to Milan, and I was coming along as the designated luggage handler and photographer. My younger sister, Sloane, was already performing for an invisible audience. She held her phone up at a high angle, finding the ring light attachment she had clipped to the top of it. "Hey guys," she chirped, her voice pitching up an octave into that influencer dialect that made my teeth ache. "We are literally at the airport right now. Birthday trip for the Queen herself. Drop a heart if you love Darlene." She swung the camera toward our mother. Darlene posed, instinctively sucking in her cheeks and tilting her chin down. She looked expensive, not because she was wealthy, but because she was good at spending money she did not strictly have. She wore a cashmere wrap that I knew for a fact still had the tag tucked inside the collar, because she planned to return it the day we got back. "And there is Gavin," Sloane narrated, panning the camera to her husband. Gavin Cross stood with his legs apart, guarding our pile of suitcases like a conqueror. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders and a watch that was too big for his wrist. He was the architect of this trip. He was the one who had insisted on Milan. He was the one who claimed his investments were finally paying off, and he wanted to treat the family. "And there is Ruth," Sloane said, her voice dropping to a flat, bored tone as the camera landed on me. I looked away. I was wearing jeans and a thick sweater. Comfortable clothes for a 14-hour travel day. In the frame of Sloane's life, I was a smudge on the lens. "Ruth, fix your hair," my mother snapped, not looking at me, but looking at my reflection in the glass partition of the check-in desk. "You look like you just rolled out of a dryer." "I have been up since 4, I said quietly. "Packing your bags, remember?" "Don't start," Darlene said. "Not today. Do not ruin my birthday." We reached the counter. The agent looked exhausted. She typed on her keyboard with a rhythm that suggested she had already given up on the day. "Passports," she said. I handed over the stack. Mine was on the bottom. I had paid for my own economy ticket, scraping together the savings from a particularly lucrative restoration of a vintage saddle a month ago. Gavin had purchased the tickets for himself. Sloane and Mom. He had made a big show of it at Christmas, printing out the itinerary on thick cardstock. "I have 4 bags to check," Gavin announced, pushing the Louis Vuitton set forward. They were fakes. Of course, I could tell from 5 feet away by the incorrect sheen on the hardware and the slightly uneven stitching on the handles. But I had never said anything. In this family, truth was treated like a personal attack. "Okay," the agent said. "And one for her?" She pointed at my battered carry-on. "No, I am carrying on," I said. "Actually," Gavin interrupted. "Ruth, put my golf bag on your ticket. We are maxed out on allowance." He didn't ask. He just kicked the heavy travel case toward me. "Gavin, I didn't pay for a checked bag, I said. It is $70. I will Venmo you, he said dismissively, turning his back to me to adjust his collar. Just pay it. Don't be cheap. I sighed. It was easier to pay than to argue. Argument led to Darlene sighing, which led to Sloane rolling her eyes, which led to a 3-hour lecture on my attitude. I pulled out my debit card. It was the blue one from Chase, the one linked to my primary checking account. I tapped the card on the reader. A sharp, dissonant beep cut through the air. Declined. The agent looked at me. It didn't go through. Try it again, I said, feeling a prickle of heat on the back of my neck. There is money in there. She tapped it again. Beep. Declined, she repeated, louder this time. The line behind us shifted. I could feel the impatience radiating from the business travelers in gray suits. Ruth, my mother hissed, what is the problem? It is not working, I said, my hands starting to tremble slightly. I pulled out my backup card. This one was linked to the emergency joint account I shared with Darlene. I had been depositing $500 a month into it for 3 years to help her with house expenses since Dad died. There should have been over $18,000 in there. I inserted the chip. Declined. My stomach dropped. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. Ruth, Sloane groaned, lowering her phone but keeping the camera running. I could see myself on her screen, looking pale and pathetic. Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Guys, my sister literally cannot pay for a bag. I don't understand, I stammered. There is money. I just checked yesterday. Step aside, Gavin said. He didn't offer his card. He stepped between me and the agent. We need to get our boarding passes printed. We are running late for the lounge. Sir, I need to process this bag, or you need to take it off, the agent said. Ruth, take the bag, Gavin commanded. We will deal with the fee later. Just give me your passport. I need to consolidate the reservation numbers so we can get the lounge access. You are holding everyone up. I need to figure out why my cards are locked, I said, panic rising in my throat like bile. Gavin, can you just cover the $70? I am not paying for your incompetence, Ruth, he said, his voice smooth and cold. Give me the passport, now. I want to make sure the agent seats us together. It was a command, not a request. My mother was glaring at me with eyes like flint. Give him the passport. Ruth, stop making a scene. You are ruining the vibe. Look at Sloane. She is upset. Sloane was not upset. She was checking her viewer count. I handed Gavin my passport. It was a reflex. A lifetime of obedience trained into me like a dog. Gavin took it. He turned to the agent and spoke in a low voice, flashing a smile that I used to think was charming but now looked predatory. The agent typed something. She frowned, then typed again. She printed out 3 boarding passes. Where is mine? I asked. Gavin turned around. He held the 3 passes in one hand and my passport in the other. He looked at me, and for a second, the mask slipped. He didn't look annoyed. He looked excited. Here is the thing. Ruth, Gavin said. He was speaking loud enough for the people in line to hear. We decided that for Darlene's 60th, she really deserves the best, so I upgraded us. That is great, I said, confused. So we are all in business? No, Gavin said. 3 of us are in first class. The lie-flat seats, the champagne, the whole works. He paused for effect. But the upgrade cost a fortune, and since your cards are declining, well, it is clear you are not really in a position to contribute to this family. Are you? What are you saying? I whispered. I canceled your ticket, Ruth, Gavin said. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. You what? I used the credit from your economy fare to cover the taxes on our upgrades, he explained, as if he were explaining simple addition to a toddler. It was the only way to make the numbers work. Plus, let us be honest, you would just be miserable. You hate flying. You hate crowds. We are doing you a favor. You canceled my ticket? I repeated. My voice sounded thin, foreign to my own ears. Gavin, give me my passport. He looked at the little blue book in his hand. Then he looked at me. "I don't think so," he said. "You are hysterical. You are not thinking straight. If I give this to you, you might try to do something crazy, like buy another ticket you can't afford and follow us. You need a timeout. Ruth?" "That is my property," I said, reaching out. He stepped back. My mother stepped in front of him. "Stop it!" Darlene shouted. "My God. Ruth, look at you. Attacking Gavin in the middle of the airport? He is trying to give me a nice birthday. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" "He stole my ticket. Mom, he took my passport." "He is keeping it safe," Darlene yelled. "You are unstable. Look at your cards. You are broke. Go home. Ruth, go home and think about how selfish you are being." "But I can't go home," I said, fighting back tears. "He has my ID. I can't even get on the light rail without ID if the transit cops stop me. I can't drive. You guys drove me here." "Figure it out," Sloane said, laughing. She was panning the camera back and forth between my tear-streaked face and Gavin's stoic, protective stance. "Content gold," she muttered. "We have to go," Gavin said, checking his oversized watch. "TSA line is getting long. Bye, Ruth." He turned. He actually turned his back on me. "Mom?" I looked at her. Darlene adjusted her cashmere wrap. She looked at me with an expression I had seen 1,000 times, a mixture of pity and disgust. "Don't call me until you have apologized to Gavin," she said. And then she turned too. They walked away. I stood there, frozen, as the stream of travelers parted around me like river water around a stone. I watched them walk toward the TSA pre-check lane. They moved with a lightness, a bounce in their steps. I stood there for 5 minutes. The agent cleared her throat. "Ma'am, you need to move." I stumbled away from the counter, dragging my feet toward a bank of metal chairs near the window. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone. I opened my banking app again. I needed to understand. I clicked on the transaction history of the joint account. Yesterday, withdrawal, counter adjustment, minus $18,420. Transferred to Cross Ventures, LLC. Gavin. I checked my personal checking account. Yesterday, external transfer initiated via Zelle, minus $3,200. Recipient, Darlene Hansen. They hadn't just canceled my ticket. They had stripped me clean. They had waited until I was trapped at the airport, miles from home, to pull the rug out so completely that I would have no choice but to crawl back to them eventually. I looked up, through the glass wall of the terminal. I could see the planes taxiing on the tarmac. Somewhere in that line was the plane that would take my mother, my sister, and the man who robbed me to Milan. I watched them enter the security queue. I saw Gavin put his arm around Darlene's shoulders. I saw Sloane laughing, her head thrown back. They didn't look back, not once. And in the set of their shoulders, in the easy sway of their walk, I saw the truth that cut deeper than the bankruptcy. They weren't just angry at me, they were relieved. They were happy I wasn't coming. I was the baggage they had finally managed to check. Only they had left me on the curb instead of the cargo hold. I was alone. I had no money. I had no identity papers. I was 31 years old, and I had been erased by the people who were supposed to love me. I sat down on the cold metal chair and stared at the gray carpet, the noise of the airport swirling around me into a deafening roar of indifference. I did not know it then, but this was the bottom, and usually, when you hit the bottom, there's only one way to go. But for me, the way up wouldn't be a climb. It would be an explosion. The vibration of the phone in my hand had stopped, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the noise of the terminal. I sat with my elbows on my knees, my head hanging low, staring at the scuffed gray carpet. My vision was swimming, the edges of the world blurring into a wet, humiliating mess. I was 31 years old, but in that moment, I felt like a child lost in a department store, waiting for a parent who had decided not to come back. I was trying to calculate how long I could stay in this chair before security asked me to leave. I had no money for a taxi. I had no ID to board a bus. Walking home to Seattle would take 8 hours. A shadow fell over me. It was not the shifting shadow of a passerby. This shadow stayed put, blocking out the harsh overhead lights. I saw the shoes first. They were black Oxford brogues, not the kind you bought at a department store, but the kind that were built on a custom last in London or Milan. They were polished to a violently perfect shine. I followed the sharp crease of the charcoal trousers up to a tailored jacket that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. "Don't cry," a voice said. It was not a request. It was a command, delivered in a low, smooth baritone that cut through the announcement about a gate change for a flight to Denver. He leaned down. I flinched, pulling back into the hard metal of the chair. But he did not touch me. He just brought his face close enough that I could smell him. He smelled of sandalwood, expensive scotch, and something cold, like ozone before a storm. "Stand up," he whispered, his lips inches from my ear. "Follow me. I will get you out of here." My survival instinct, dormant for the last hour, finally kicked in. I scrambled back, nearly tipping the chair over. I looked up at him. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair swept back and eyes the color of a winter ocean, gray, intelligent, and completely devoid of warmth. He was handsome in the way a shark is handsome, sleek, dangerous, and perfectly adapted to his environment. "Get away from me," I managed to choke out. My voice was raspy. "I will scream. I swear to God, I will scream." He did not back away. He did not look around nervously. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at me with an expression of mild curiosity. "You could scream," he acknowledged calmly. He raised one hand and pointed a long finger toward the ceiling. "Do you see that black dome? And that one over by the pretzel stand? And the 3 mounted above the security checkpoint?" I followed his finger. "There are 4,000 cameras in SeaTac," he said. "Do you really think a man in a $5,000 suit is going to kidnap a hysterical woman in the middle of one of the busiest airports in America in broad daylight?" The logic was cold, but it was solid. I wiped my face with my sleeve, hating the action. "Who are you?" "My name is Adrian Vale," he said. The name meant nothing to me. It sounded like a name on a building, or a charitable foundation, not a person standing in Terminal B. "I don't know you," I said. "No," he agreed, "but I know you. You are Ruth Hansen. You operate a restoration studio in a converted garage in Ballard. Last year, you restored a 1924 Cartier mystery clock for a private client in Bel Air. The mechanism was corroded by salt air. Everyone else said it was junk. You spent 200 hours machining new gears by hand because the original parts no longer existed. You charged him $12,000. You should have charged him $50,000. My breath hitched. That job had been my masterpiece. I had never advertised it. The client had been obsessively private. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice steadying. "That is confidential client information." "I know it because I bought the clock," Adrian said. "It keeps perfect time. Your work is adequate." "Adequate?" I bristled. Even in my ruin, my professional pride was the one thing they hadn't stripped away. That escapement was a miracle of engineering. "It was excellent," he corrected, a ghost of a smile touching the corner of his mouth. "Which is why I am here. I do not need a damsel in distress. Ruth, I need a technician, and I need her right now." He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe that was worth more than my mother's house. "We are wasting time. My plane is waiting at the private terminal." "I am not going anywhere with you," I said, though my resolve was weakening. "My family. They took my passport. They took my money. I can't leave this airport, let alone the country." "You mean this passport?" Adrian reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a small, dark blue booklet and tossed it onto my lap. I stared at it. The gold eagle on the cover glinted under the lights. I picked it up with trembling fingers and flipped it open. My photo, my name, Ruth Hansen. "How?" I looked up at him, stunned. "Gavin had this. He was in the security line. He wouldn't just give it to you." Gavin Cross is a man who understands leverage, even if he is not very smart. Adrian said dismissively. I had a brief conversation with him while you were sitting here feeling sorry for yourself. I explained that retaining the passport of a U.S. citizen against their will is a federal offense, and that my legal team was standing by to file immediate charges with the Port Authority police. I also mentioned that I knew about the liquidity issues in his shell company. Adrian buttoned his jacket. He handed it over quite politely, although he did seem in a rush to get away from me. I held the passport to my chest. It felt like a lifeline. Thank you, I whispered. I will pay you back for the legal fees. Just let me go. I don't want your money, Ruth, Adrian said. I want your eyes. He stepped closer, his voice dropping again, creating a private sphere of sound amidst the chaos of the travelers. I am flying to Milan for the De Luca estate auction, he said. There is a parure, a set of emeralds and diamonds, attributed to the House of Boucheron, circa 1890. The opening bid is $6 million. I intend to buy it. Okay, I said, confused. Good for you. The problem, Adrian continued, is that I have reason to believe the center stones have been swapped. Synthetics, high-level laboratory grown, aged with radiation to mimic natural inclusions. The paperwork is flawless. The provenance is forged. My usual appraisers are too afraid of the De Luca family to tell me the truth. But you? You don't care about politics. You care about the object. You want me to authenticate a $6 million necklace? I asked. In Milan? I want you to tell me if I'm being played, Adrian said. In exchange, I will pay you $50,000 for the weekend, and I will give you a ride home. $50,000. That was enough to rent a new apartment. Enough to restart. Enough to never ask my mother for help again. But the fear was still there. I look like a wreck, I said, gesturing to my jeans and tear-stained sweater. I can't walk into a high-stakes auction. We will handle the wardrobe, Adrian said impatiently. Are you coming or not? I hesitated. The money was tempting, but the man was terrifying. He was moving pieces on a board I couldn't even see. I can't, I said. I can't handle any more drama. I just want to go home and hide. Adrian looked at me. The coldness in his eyes shifted, sharpening into something sharper. He knew he had to play his ace. There is one more condition, he said slowly. What? If you come with me, you cannot go as my appraiser. The De Lucas are suspicious of hired experts. To get you close enough to touch those stones, to get you the loop and the light without them hovering over you, you need to be above suspicion. You need to be someone they would never dare question. He paused, letting the noise of the airport fade away. You have to go as my fiancé. I laughed. It was a dry, cracked sound. You are insane. Look at me. Nobody would believe that. They will believe what I tell them to believe, Adrian said arrogantly. But that is not the only reason you will say yes. And why is that? Because Gavin Cross is going to be there. The air left my lungs. What? Your brother-in-law, Adrian said. He is attending the gala. He has managed to secure an invitation as a quote-unquote international investor. He is going to be there, parading your mother and sister around, spending money he stole from you, acting like he owns the world. My hands clenched into fists. I could see it. I could see Gavin holding a glass of champagne, laughing about how they left poor Ruth at the airport. I could see Sloane live-streaming from the balcony. If you stay here, Adrian said softly, you are the victim. You are the girl who got left behind. You go home, you cry, you rebuild your little life, and they win. They will always have this over you. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, they will look at you and know they broke you. He leaned in closer. But if you come with me, you walk into that ballroom on my arm. You walk in wearing a dress that costs more than Gavin's car. You walk in not as the daughter they discarded, but as the future wife of a man who could buy and sell their entire existence before breakfast. My heart was hammering against my ribs. It wasn't the $50,000. It wasn't the emeralds. It was the image of Gavin's face, the image of my mother's shock. Why? I asked him. Why do you care about my family? Why go through this trouble for an appraiser? I have my reasons, Adrian said, and for the first time, his voice held a dark edge that suggested his own hunger for revenge was just as deep as mine. Let's just say I dislike liars, and Gavin Cross is a very loud liar. He held out his hand. It was a large hand, steady and waiting. So, Ruth, he said, do you want to go home and be safe? Or do you want to go to Milan and burn them to the ground? I looked at the passport in my hand. I looked at the empty space where my family had stood 10 minutes ago. I felt the phantom weight of the baggage I'd been carrying for 31 years, the need to please, the need to be quiet, the need to be grateful for scraps. I stood up. My legs were shaky, but I locked my knees. I reached out and took his hand. His grip was firm, cool, and electrifying. I don't have a dress, I said. Adrian Vale smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile that promised havoc. Trust me, he said. We walked toward the private security gate. I didn't look back at the main terminal. I didn't look back at the life I was supposed to have. As we walked, I realized something. My family had abandoned me because they thought I was worthless. They had no idea that in the world of restoration, the most valuable things are often the ones that have been broken and put back together with gold. I was done being broken. It was time to become the gold. The interior of Adrian Vale's car was quieter than a church. It was a black Mercedes Maybach, the kind with curtains on the windows and seats that felt like they were upholstered in butter. As the driver pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos of SeaTac behind, the silence felt physical, pressing against my eardrums. Adrian sat across from me, his long legs crossed, watching me with that same analytical detachment he had shown in the terminal. He reached into the console and pulled out a sleek black smartphone. It was brand new, the plastic film still on the screen. Take it, he said. I hesitated. I have a phone. You have a tracking device that connects you to people who just robbed you, Adrian corrected. If you turn your old phone on, they will see you are still at the airport. They will send you text messages designed to make you feel guilty or small. They will call you to demand you fix problems they created. Do you want that? I looked at my cracked iPhone, resting in my lap. It was already buzzing. Probably Sloane sending a screenshot of her view from the first-class lounge. Probably my mother asking why I hadn't Venmo'd her the rest of the grocery money yet. No, I whispered. Then turn it off, Adrian said. Put it in the bag. From this moment until Sunday, Ruth Hansen does not exist. You are my fiancé, and my fiancé does not take calls from suburbia. I powered down my phone. The screen went black. A strange weight lifted off my chest, followed immediately by a surge of panic. I was untethered. Good, Adrian said. He handed me the new device. This is encrypted. It has one number saved in it. Mine. Now, let us discuss the terms of our arrangement. He opened a leather briefcase on the seat beside him and withdrew a thick manila folder. He did not hand it to me immediately. He held it, his fingers resting on the tab. I told you I would pay you $50,000, he said, and I will. But money is just a tool. It is neutral. What I am about to give you is a weapon. He slid the folder across the small table between us. You restore antiques, Ruth. You look at the provenance of an object, where it came from, who owned it, how it was altered over time. You are an expert in history. He tapped the folder. This is the provenance of Gavin Cross. I opened the file. The first page was a photocopy of a driver's license from Florida, dated 8 years ago. The face was younger, a little heavier, but the eyes were the same, beady, arrogant. But the name was not Gavin Cross. Gary Miller, I read aloud. Gary Miller was a timeshare salesman in Boca Raton. Adrian narrated, his voice dry. He was mediocre at it. He had a gambling problem and a tendency to borrow money from elderly widows. 8 years ago, he faced 3 indictments for check fraud. He skipped bail, moved to the Pacific Northwest, and legally changed his name to Gavin Cross. A fresh start. A new coat of paint over a rotten structure. I flipped the page. There were bank statements, LLC registrations, A complex web of companies with names that sounded impressive but meant nothing. Cross Global Ventures, Apex Horizon Holdings, the Sterling Trust. He is running a Ponzi scheme, I said, the realization hitting me like a slap. I recognized the pattern. I had seen it in the art world. Dealers selling shares of a painting that didn't exist. He is paying the early investors with the money from the new ones. It is not even that sophisticated, Adrian said. A true Ponzi scheme requires some level of mathematical genius. Gavin is just robbing Peter to pay Paul, and spending 20% of the take on watches and first-class tickets to keep up appearances. He targets a very specific demographic. I looked at the list of investors. Martha Higgins, age 72. Joyce Klein, age 68. Darlene Hanson, age 60. My stomach turned over. He targets women who are insecure about their status, Adrian said ruthlessly. Women who want to believe they are part of the elite. He sells them exclusivity. He tells them he is letting them in on a secret deal, something usually reserved for billionaires. He flatters them. He tells them they are smart for investing with him. I stared at my mother's name. She thinks he is a genius. She tells everyone he is a financial wizard. She has to, Adrian said. If he is a fraud, then she is a fool, and your mother would rather lose her last dollar than admit she was fooled. I turned the page again, and my breath stopped. It was a property deed. It was the deed to the house in Ballard. My childhood home, the house my father had bought in 1982, the house where I had built my studio in the detached garage. It was the only asset my father had left us, paid off years ago so that Mom would never have to worry about rent. Across the bottom line, in looping, confident blue ink, was my mother's signature. Transfer of title. She sold it? I choked out. She sold the house? She did not sell it, Adrian corrected. She leveraged it. See here? She signed the deed over to Cross Global Ventures as collateral for a high-yield loan. Gavin convinced her that the equity in the house was dead money sitting there doing nothing. He promised her he could double the value in 6 months if she let him invest the equity. He stole the house, I whispered. The paper shook in my hands. He owns it, if his company goes under. When his company goes under, Adrian said, the creditors will seize the assets. The house is the primary asset. Your mother will be homeless within 90 days of this house of cards collapsing. I felt sick. I thought about the workshop in the garage, my tools, the smell of cedar and varnish, the only place in the world where I felt safe. Gavin hadn't just taken my seat on a plane. He had taken the ground beneath my feet. Why? I looked up at Adrian, tears stinging my eyes. Not tears of sadness this time, but of pure, white-hot rage. Why are you showing me this now? Why didn't you go to the police? Because the police take months, Adrian said, and because Gavin made a mistake that makes this personal for me. He pointed to a document near the back of the file. It was a glossy brochure for Gavin's investment firm. Under the section titled Strategic Partners, there was a logo. Vale Capital. He is telling people I am backing him, Adrian said. His voice dropped an octave, the temperature in the car seeming to plummet. He is using my name to close deals. He told your mother that I am his mentor. He told the De Luca family in Milan that he is bidding on their jewelry on my behalf. That is why he is going to the auction. I realized he isn't there to buy. He doesn't have $6 million. He is there to pretend he is associated with you. Exactly, Adrian said. He is a parasite. He attaches himself to something larger and sucks the blood out of it until it withers. He did it to your mother. He is trying to do it to my reputation. Adrian leaned forward. I could sue him. I could have him arrested. But that is too clean. Men like Gavin Cross flourish in the gray areas of the law. If I sue him, he plays the victim. He tells your mother the big bad billionaire crushed his startup. She will believe him. She will hate you for helping me. She already hates me, I said bitterly. She signed over Dad's house to buy a ticket to Italy. So stop trying to save her, Adrian said. The words hung there. What? You are reading that file and thinking about how to get her out of this, Adrian said. You are thinking about how to explain it to her so she understands. You are thinking about how to work extra shifts to pay off the loan. He was right. That was exactly what I was thinking. It was the habit of a lifetime. Ruth fixes the mess. Ruth pays the bill. She is a grown woman. Ruth, Adrian said. She signed the papers. She chose the parasite over the daughter. If you try to save her now, she will drag you down with her. You cannot save someone who is actively enjoying the drowning. So I just let him take the house? No, Adrian said. You take it back, but not by begging and not by explaining. He took the folder from my hands and closed it. The sound was final. We are going to Milan. You are going to verify that the DeLuca emeralds are fakes, because I suspect Gavin is involved in that, too. He is trying to broker a sale of synthetic stones to cover his losses on the house. If we prove the stones are fake, and we prove he knew about it, his credibility evaporates. The investors will panic. The creditors will call in the debts. And the house? I have already purchased the debt on the house from the shell company's bank, Adrian said casually, as if he were discussing buying a sandwich. Technically, Gavin owes me the money. When he defaults, I foreclose. My eyes widened. You are going to take my house? I am going to take his asset, Adrian said. What I do with it afterwards depends entirely on you. He looked at me, his gray eyes searching my face for weakness. If you do this job for me, Ruth, if you play the part, if you walk into that room and help me destroy him publicly, I will sign the deed over to you, not to your mother, to you. Sole ownership. She will be furious, I said. If I own the house, she will have to live by my rules. Precisely, Adrian said. That is what power looks like. It is not about cruelty, it is about control. For 30 years, they have controlled you with guilt. Now, you will control them with reality. The car slowed down. We were approaching the private tarmac. I could see the sleek white jet waiting, its engines already humming. I looked at the new phone in my hand. I thought about Darlene, drinking champagne in first class, oblivious to the fact that she had just signed her life away to a timeshare salesman named Gary. I thought about the way she looked at me at the check-in counter, like I was a stain on her cashmere wrap. Adrian was right. I had spent my whole life trying to be good enough to be kept. It hadn't worked. Now, I had to be strong enough to be feared. Okay, I said. My voice was steady. I will do it. Excellent, Adrian said. The car stopped. The driver opened the door. The rush of jet fuel and cool air hit my face. One last thing, Adrian said, pausing as he stepped out onto the tarmac. He looked back at me. The woman who was crying in the terminal? She stays here. She does not get on the plane. I nodded. I unbuckled my seatbelt. I left the tear-stained sweater in the car. I stepped out into the wind, my spine straight. She is gone, I said. Good, Adrian said, because the woman who lands in Milan needs to be ready to walk through fire. We walked toward the stairs of the jet. I did not look at the ground. I looked up at the sky. It was vast and indifferent, just like the man walking beside me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like a loaded gun. Milan smelled different than Seattle. It smelled of espresso, diesel fumes, and old money. But inside the lobby of the Palazzo Parigi, the air was scrubbed clean of the city, replaced by the scent of fresh white lilies and beeswax polish. I stood near a massive marble pillar, my hand resting lightly on the cool stone. I was not hiding. I was waiting. 24 hours ago, I had been wearing denim and despair. Now, I was wearing armor constructed by the finest tailors in Lombardy. Adrian had been true to his word. He had not dressed me in sparkles or loud prints. He understood that true power does not shout. It whispers. I wore a column dress of slate-gray silk that poured over my body like liquid mercury. It had long sleeves, a high neck, and a back that plunged dangerously low. It was severe, elegant, and terrifyingly expensive. My hair was pulled back into a sharp, architectural knot at the base of my neck. My face was clean, save for a blood-red lip that felt like a warning sign. I had no purse. I had no phone in my hand. People who control the room do not need to carry their own things. I saw them before they saw me. The revolving doors spun, and my family spilled into the hushed lobby like an overturned basket of cheap laundry. They were loud, they were frantic, and they were painfully, visibly out of place. Sloane entered first, walking backward, her phone held high on a gimbal stabilizer. "Hi, everyone," she narrated, her voice grating against the serene atmosphere of the hotel. "We just arrived at the venue. Look at this marble. Look at this chandelier. We are literally living the good life right now." She was wearing a pink dress with too many ruffles and sequins that caught the light in a cheap, plastic way. Behind her, Darlene struggled with a shopping bag from a tourist shop, wearing a sun hat that was entirely inappropriate for an evening gala. And then there was Gavin. My brother-in-law was sweating. He was wearing a tuxedo, but the fit was wrong. The collar gaped at the neck, and the fabric had the stiff, shiny look of a rental. He was scanning the room, his eyes darting nervously, looking for someone important to attach himself to. I watched them for a full minute. I watched the way the concierge behind the desk narrowed his eyes at them. I watched the way a couple in the corner, an older Italian man and a woman in vintage Chanel, stopped their conversation to stare with polite disdain. My family thought they were the main characters. They did not realize they were the comic relief. I pushed off the pillar and began to walk toward them. The click of my heels on the marble was sharp and rhythmic. Sloane spun around to get a panoramic shot of the lobby, and her camera landed on me. She froze. The phone wavered. "Oh my God," she mouthed. She lowered the phone, then immediately raised it again, zooming in. "Ruth?" Darlene's voice carried across the lobby. She sounded scandalized, as if I were a ghost who had shown up to haunt her birthday. I stopped 3 feet away from them. I did not smile. I did not shrink. I stood with my spine straight, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "What are you doing here?" Gavin hissed, stepping in front of my mother. His face went from shock to aggressive panic in a heartbeat. He looked around quickly, checking if anyone was watching. "How did you get here? Did you follow us? Did you steal a credit card?" "Hello, Gavin," I said. My voice was calm, pitched low. "Hello, Mother." "You are embarrassing us," Darlene whispered furiously, clutching her shopping bag. "Look at you. You look severe. Where did you get that dress? Is it a knockoff? Did you max out the emergency card? I told you that account was frozen." "I did not use your money," I said. "Then leave," Gavin commanded. Stepping into my personal space, he smelled of stale airplane air and anxiety. "This is an exclusive event. Ruth, this is the DeLuca Gala weekend. You can't just walk in here off the street because you are jealous. Security will throw you out, and I am not going to bail you out. I mean it. Go find a hostel." Sloane was still filming. "Guys," she whispered to her stream, "you will not believe this. My sister literally stalked us to Milan. This is insane family drama. Hit the like button if you think she's obsessed." I looked at Sloane, then I looked past her, to the bellman standing near the luggage cart. "Are you checking in?" I asked. "Of course we are checking in," Gavin lied. He puffed out his chest. "We are guests of the hotel. We are just waiting for our suite to be ready." I looked at the luggage tag on Darlene's bag. It was a bright orange sticker from a budget bus line that ran from the outer airport lots to the city center. And peeking out of Gavin's pocket was a printed confirmation email. The font was large enough for me to read the header upside down. Hostel Milano Centrale. 4-bed dormitory. Shared bath. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't staying here. They weren't even staying at a regular hotel. They were staying at a youth hostel near the train station. They had come to the Palazzo Parigi just to use the lobby for Sloane's Instagram content. The first-class upgrade Gavin had bragged about? Probably a lie, too. They likely flew economy and just took photos in the business class line before boarding. Everything about them was a hollow shell. "You aren't staying here," I said. It wasn't a question. Gavin turned a mottled shade of red. "Keep your voice down. Of course we are." "Sir," the concierge called out from the desk. His tone was polite but icy. "Please, I must ask you again to move your bags. The lobby is for registered guests only. If you are not checking in, you must clear the walkway." The silence that followed was excruciating. Sloane quickly panned the camera away from the concierge, pointing it at the floor. Darlene looked like she had been slapped. "We are meeting someone!" Gavin shouted at the concierge, his voice cracking. "We are investors. We have a meeting with Mr. Vale." "Mr. Vale is currently in the penthouse suite," the concierge replied dryly, "and I do not believe he has any appointments with—" He looked Gavin up and down, his gaze lingering on the ill-fitting tuxedo. "Tourists?" "We are not tourists," Darlene screeched. "My son-in-law is a financier." "Gavin," I said softly, "stop." "You shut up," Gavin spat at me, turning his venom back to the easiest target. "This is your fault. You brought bad energy. You show up here looking like some high-class escort, trying to ruin my networking. I should have left you in Seattle without a passport. You should have what?" The voice came from the grand staircase behind me. It was not loud, but it stopped the entire room. It was a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. I did not turn around. I felt him approach. I felt the air shift as he stepped up beside me. Adrian Vale was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, midnight blue velvet that absorbed the light. He looked like a prince of darkness. He did not look at Gavin. He did not look at Darlene. He looked only at me. He reached out and placed a hand on the small of my back. His touch was warm through the silk of my dress. It was possessive. It was protective. It was a claim. "Darling," Adrian said, his eyes locking with mine. "I was wondering where you had gone. I told you the champagne in the suite is better than anything they serve down here." He turned slowly to face my family. His expression was one of mild confusion, as if he had found a group of raccoons rummaging through his trash. "And who?" Adrian asked. "Are these people shouting at my fiancé?" The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Fiancé. Sloane dropped her phone. It hit the marble floor with a crack, but she didn't even look at it. Her mouth was hanging open. Darlene blinked rapidly. Her brain was trying to process the visual information in front of her. The billionaire, the suit, the hand on my waist, the word. "Fiancé?" Darlene squeaked. Gavin looked like he was having a stroke. "Mr. Vale? I asked you a question," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "Why are you shouting at Ruth?" We aren't shouting." Darlene scrambled forward, shoving Gavin aside. Her face transformed instantly. The scowl vanished, replaced by a terrifying sycophantic beam. She smoothed her dress, preening. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Vale, we are her family. I am Darlene, her mother. We were so worried. We didn't know where she was." She looked at me, her eyes wide and wet with fake emotion. "Ruthie, honey, why didn't you tell us? We were frantic at the airport. We thought you got lost." "You canceled my ticket," I said. "It was a misunderstanding," Darlene cried, waving her hand as if shooing away a fly. "A computer glitch. Gavin was just trying to fix it. Weren't you, Gavin?" Gavin nodded vigorously, sweat dripping down his temple. "Yes, absolutely. We were just saying how much we missed you. Ruth, and, wait, engaged?" Gavin looked at Adrian, his eyes calculating, greed warring with fear. "You are engaged to Adrian Vale?" "It happened quite recently," Adrian said smoothly. He pulled me closer. "Ruth is extraordinary, her eye for detail, her integrity, qualities that are apparently rare." He looked at the cheap bus tag on their luggage. I assume you are here for the auction viewing? Adrian asked. Yes, Gavin said. Yes, we are. I am looking into acquisitions for the portfolio. Excellent, Adrian said. Then I suppose we will see you inside. Although, he paused, glancing at the concierge who was now approaching with security. It appears there is some confusion about your accommodations. Oh, we have a private villa booked, Gavin lied, his voice high and thin. Outside the city, for privacy. A villa, Adrian repeated. How charming. Well, Ruth and I are staying here, in the royal suite. He looked down at me. Shall we go in, my love? The DeLucas are waiting to meet you. Yes, I said. I turned my head and looked at my mother. She was practically vibrating with the desire to reach out and touch Adrian's velvet sleeve. She was already rewriting history in her head. She wasn't the mother who abandoned her daughter. She was the mother-in-law of a billionaire. Ruthie, Darlene whispered, stepping closer. Can we come up for a drink later? To celebrate? I want to hear all about it. I am so happy for you. I looked at her. I saw the hunger in her eyes. It wasn't love. It was appetite. She saw me as a meal ticket again. I smiled. It was a small, fragile thing, sharp as glass. We will see. Mother, I said. We have a very busy schedule. But the gala tomorrow, Sloane interjected, picking up her cracked phone. We can sit together. I can help you with your makeup. We can do a get ready with me video. I don't think so. Sloane, I said. My makeup is done. Come, Adrian said. He guided me away. We walked toward the gilded elevators, leaving them standing in the lobby with their fake luggage and their cracked screens. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the sight of Gavin arguing with security about their right to stand there, I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. You did well, Adrian said quietly, not letting go of my waist. They bought it, I said, watching the numbers climb. They actually bought it. They didn't even question it. They just saw the money and forgot everything else. Greed is a powerful blinder, Adrian said. They are staying in a hostel, I said, a bitter laugh bubbling up in my throat. Gavin lied to everyone. He is drowning. And tomorrow, Adrian said as the elevator chimed at the penthouse floor, we are going to hand him an anchor. I stepped out into the plush hallway. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was the cold, hard satisfaction of a lock clicking into place. I wasn't just observing the restoration anymore. I was holding the hammer. The ballroom of the Palazzo Parigi was a sea of black tuxedos and glittering gowns, humming with the low, expensive murmur of people who controlled economies. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and heavy perfume. I stood next to Adrian, a glass of mineral water in my hand, watching the room with a new set of eyes. Before today, I would have felt small in a place like this. I would have worried about my posture or my hemline. But tonight, I looked at the crowd and saw what they really were. Collectors. And I was the expert who knew how to spot the cracks in their porcelain veneers. My family was circulating near the buffet tables. Naturally, Gavin was cornering a bored-looking man who I recognized as a French textiles heir, gesturing wildly with a shrimp skewer. Darlene was nodding enthusiastically at everything, her eyes darting around to see who was watching her, and Sloane was hovering, her phone raised like a weapon, looking for content. I saw Sloane clock our location. She whispered something to Darlene, then detached herself from the group. She picked up a glass of red wine from a passing tray, a heavy dark Barolo that stained the glass crimson, and began to walk toward us. I knew what was coming. I had seen this move 1,000 times in our kitchen, at my graduation, at my own small studio launch party. Sloane was an agent of chaos who disguised her malice as clumsiness. She wanted to break the image I had constructed. She wanted to turn the sophisticated fiancé back into the messy, flustered sister who couldn't handle nice things. She approached from my left, her eyes fixed on the camera lens, narrating her approach. As she reached us, she pretended to trip on the edge of the carpet. It was a terrible performance, overly theatrical, but the physics were real enough. The glass tilted. The dark red liquid arced through the air and splashed violently across the front of my slate-gray silk dress. The cold wetness hit my stomach and soaked through to the skin instantly. The dark stain bloomed across the metallic fabric like a gunshot wound, ugly and spreading fast. The room seemed to go silent. "Oh my God!" Sloane shrieked, her hand flying to her mouth in a pantomime of shock. "Ruth, I am so sorry, I tripped. Oh, look at your dress. It is ruined." But the camera was steady. She was zooming in on the stain. "Ruth!" Darlene appeared out of nowhere, her voice a sharp hiss. "What did you do? Why were you standing in the way? You know your sister is clumsy. Look at this mess. You are embarrassing Mr. Vale." It was the old script. Sloane holds the knife, and I get blamed for bleeding on the carpet. Beside me, I felt Adrian tense. His body went rigid, radiating a terrifying heat. He took a step forward, his jaw set in a line that promised violence. He was about to destroy them. He was about to call security, call them out, maybe even throw Gavin through a window. I reached out and placed my hand on his chest. "No," I said softly. Adrian looked down at me, his eyes blazing. "Ruth, she threw wine on you." "I know," I said. "Let me handle it." I turned to Sloane. She was smirking behind her hand, waiting for me to cry, waiting for me to run to the bathroom and hide, leaving the field open for them to spin the story. I did not run. I handed my water glass to Adrian. Then I walked calmly over to the bar, which was only a few feet away. The bartender, a young man named Marco, looked at me with pity. "Ma'am," he said, "I am so sorry. Some club soda? A towel?" "No towels," I said, my voice clear and projecting just enough to be heard by the circle of people watching. Rubbing wet silk breaks the fibers. It creates a permanent halo. I looked at the bar setup. I needed chemistry, not cleaning. "Give me the salt cellar," I commanded, "and the bottle of white wine, the dry Pinot Grigio, and a clean linen napkin, dry." Sloane laughed nervously. "Ruth, what are you doing? You are making it worse. Just go change. Oh, wait, you don't have any other clothes, do you?" I ignored her. I took the bottle of white wine. "Red wine contains anthocyanins," I said, my voice steady, lecturing as if I were back in my studio teaching an apprentice. "They are plant pigments. They bind to fabric fibers, but they are soluble in alcohol and diluted acid." I poured the white wine directly onto the red stain on my chest. The crowd gasped. Darlene made a choking sound. "She is drunk. She is pouring more alcohol on herself." "Watch," I said. The white wine hit the red, and the dark crimson color immediately dissolved, turning into a pale, translucent pink. The dark tannins were neutralized. I didn't stop. I took the salt cellar, coarse sea salt, and poured a thick layer over the wet silk. "Salt is hygroscopic," I explained, smoothing the white crystals over the fabric with a gentle circular motion of my palm. "It draws moisture out of the fibers. It lifts the pigment up, away from the silk, before it can set." I stood there in the center of the ballroom, covered in salt and wine, looking like a madwoman, but I stood with absolute confidence. I waited, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. The salt began to turn pink as it absorbed the liquid. "Marco," I said, "now the club soda, in a spray bottle if you have it." He didn't have a spray bottle, so I took a siphon. I blasted the salt patch gently. The crystals washed away, taking the last of the pink with them. The dress was wet, yes. A dark patch of damp silk clung to my stomach, but the red was gone. The stain was gone. "Now," I said, picking up the dry linen napkin, "we blot, we do not rub." I pressed the linen against the silk, absorbing the excess moisture. Then, I reached up to my shoulder. The dress had a long, decorative sash that trailed down the back. I pulled it around to the front, draped it artistically over the damp area, and secured it with the diamond brooch Adrian had pinned to his lapel earlier that evening. I plucked it right off his jacket without asking. I stepped back. The drape looked intentional. The brooch caught the light. The dress looked avant-garde, structural, and flawless. There was a beat of silence. Then, the man standing nearest to me, an elderly gentleman with a shock of white hair and a monocle hanging around his neck, started to clap. It was a slow, appreciative applause. "Bravo," he said. "That was masterful." The rest of the circle joined in. It wasn't polite applause. It was impressed applause. I hadn't just cleaned a dress. I had performed a magic trick. I had shown them that I understood materials better than they understood their own bank accounts. Sloane lowered her phone. The live stream comments must have been turning against her, because her face was pale. She had tried to paint me as a mess, and I had just turned myself into a piece of performance art. "Who is that?" the white-haired man asked, stepping forward. He ignored Gavin, who was trying to interject. He looked directly at me. "I am Ruth Hansen," I said, extending a hand that was still slightly damp with white wine. "I am a restoration specialist." The man's eyes widened. "Hansen? You are the one who restored the Romanov fan for the Getty last year? The one with the missing ivory guards?" I paused. That was a small job. Very technical. "Yes, that was me." "I am Alessandro De Luca," he said. My heart stopped. This was the host, the owner of the emeralds, the man Adrian was here to destroy, or save, depending on how the night went. "Signor De Luca," I said, dipping my head, "it is an honor." "The honor is mine," De Luca said, taking my hand and kissing the air above it. "I have a collection of 16th century tapestries that are falling apart. No one in Europe will touch them. They say they are too fragile, but if you can handle wet silk with that much courage, perhaps we should talk." "I would love to," I said. I looked past De Luca's shoulder. Gavin was standing there, his mouth slightly open. The color had drained from his face. He looked at De Luca, the most powerful man in the room, fawning over me. He looked at Adrian, who was watching me with a look of intense, smoldering pride. And then he looked at me. For the first time in 10 years, Gavin Cross didn't look at me with contempt. He looked at me with fear. He realized that the useless sister-in-law he had bullied and robbed was speaking a language he couldn't understand, with people he couldn't afford to know. Sloane tried to rally. "Well," she said, her voice shrill, "it is still wet. It looks magnificent," Adrian said, stepping to my side. He wrapped an arm around my waist, his hand resting on the dry silk of my back. "It looks like competence. Something you wouldn't recognize. Sloane?" Sloane shut her mouth. She hurriedly ended her live stream and shoved the phone into her purse. The narrative had slipped from her fingers. "Come, Ruth," De Luca said, offering his arm. "I want to show you the emeralds before the auction tomorrow. I want your opinion on the setting. I trust your eyes." I took the billionaire's arm. As I walked away, I felt a vibration in the floor, the shift of power. I wasn't just Adrian Vale's fake fiancée anymore. I was Ruth Hansen, the restorer, and I was about to strip the varnish off my family's lies, layer by ugly layer. I glanced back once. Darlene was staring at me, clutching her cheap bag. She looked smaller than I remembered. And Gavin was sweating through his rental tuxedo, realizing that the game had just changed, and he was no longer the one rolling the dice. The private dining room Adrian had secured was a glass-walled aquarium of silence amidst the noise of the hotel. While the gala continued to roar outside, we were sealed in a space of velvet chairs, white tablecloths, and a tension so thick it felt like humidity. Adrian sat at the head of the table. I sat to his right. My family sat opposite us, arranged like prisoners of war who had suddenly been invited to dine with the general. "This is just exquisite," Darlene said, running her hand over the tablecloth. She was looking at Adrian with a hunger that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Vale, I cannot thank you enough. When Ruthie told us she was engaged, well, you could have knocked me over with a feather. We always worried she would end up alone." "Did you?" Adrian asked. He swirled the dark red wine in his glass, his eyes fixed on my mother. "Why is that?" "Oh, you know," Darlene laughed, a nervous, tittering sound. "Ruthie is intense. She is so focused on her little projects. She is not like Sloane. Sloane was born to be a wife. She has that warmth. Ruth has always been a bit cold, difficult to love. I stared at my plate. The appetizer was a delicate carpaccio of sea bass, arranged like flower petals. I picked up my fork, my hand steady only through sheer force of will. Difficult to love. That was the narrative. I was the difficult one because I had boundaries. I was the cold one because I didn't set myself on fire to keep them warm. I find Ruth's intensity to be her most captivating quality, Adrian said. His voice was smooth, but there was a razor blade hidden in the tone. It suggests a depth of character that is rare these days. Well, she is certainly lucky, Gavin interrupted. Leaning forward, he had unbuttoned his tuxedo jacket, revealing the strain of the fabric across his stomach. He was trying to project confidence, but he smelled of sweat and desperation. To land a man of your stature, Mr. Vale, it is a game changer for the whole family. Is it? I asked quietly. Gavin ignored me. He locked eyes with Adrian. Actually, sir, I have been meaning to discuss some synergies. I run a boutique investment firm, Cross Global Ventures. We are currently outperforming the S&P 500 by 12% this quarter. I have a proprietary algorithm that capitalizes on distressed assets. Distressed assets, Adrian repeated. Like family homes? Gavin didn't blink. He didn't catch the reference. He was too focused on the imaginary deal he was closing. Exactly, real estate, commodities, crypto. I have a very exclusive client list. Darlene here is one of my top investors. We are seeing incredible returns, aren't we, Darlene? Oh, incredible, my mother chirped. Gavin is a genius. He took the equity from the house, just sitting there doing nothing, and he put it to work. He says I will be able to retire in Palm Beach by next year. I felt a wave of nausea. She was talking about the house my father built, the house she had signed over to a con artist. She was bragging about her own destruction. That sounds fascinating, Adrian said. I would love to see your prospectus, perhaps later. I have it on my phone right now, Gavin said, reaching into his pocket. Gavin, let the man eat, Sloane said, rolling her eyes. She was texting under the table, probably complaining to her followers that the Wi-Fi in the private room was slow. Don't be boring. Business is never boring. Sloane, Gavin snapped. Then he looked at me. His eyes narrowed. My phone, lying face down next to my fork, vibrated. I ignored it. It vibrated again, a long, insistent buzz against the wood of the table. Aren't you going to check that, darling? Adrian asked. He knew. He saw everything. I flipped the phone over. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. Gavin must have pulled my new number from the group chat invite I had ignored earlier. I know this is a setup. You are not engaged. You are playing dress-up. Get me a meeting with Vale's partners for tomorrow, or I release the power of attorney documents to the bank. I will liquidate the house by Monday morning. Mom will be on the street, and it will be your fault. I looked up. Gavin was smiling at me. It was a tight, cruel smile. He raised his glass in a mock toast. He had the leverage. He still had the legal authority over my mother's finances. Even if Adrian had bought the debt, Gavin could still trigger clauses, cause chaos, and ruin Darlene's credit before we could stop him. He was holding a grenade and threatening to pull the pin if I didn't open the door for him. I felt the old fear rising. The fear of being the reason everything fell apart. The fear of Darlene screaming, Ruth, you ruined it. Ruth, fix it. Then I felt Adrian's knee brush against mine under the table. A solid, grounding presence. Prepare the weapon, he had said. I took a breath. I needed him to say it. I needed him to say it out loud. Where the microphone in my purse, which was sitting on the floor by my feet, the recording app running since we sat down, could catch it. Gavin, I said, my voice trembling. I let the fear bleed into my tone. I made myself sound small. Gavin, please, don't do that. Do what, Ruthie? Gavin asked innocently. The house, I said. You said, in your text, you said you would liquidate the house by Monday. Darlene stopped eating. What? What are you talking about? Just Ruth being dramatic again, Gavin said quickly, his eyes hard on me. She doesn't understand high finance. Darlene, she gets confused. I am not confused, I said, pitching my voice to sound on the verge of tears. You said if I didn't get you a meeting, you would sell the house. Mom, he is threatening to sell the house. Gavin? Darlene looked at him. You said the house was safe. You said it was just collateral. It is safe, Gavin said, his voice hardening. He looked at me with pure venom. He realized he had to assert dominance to shut me up. But Ruth needs to understand that business requires cooperation. If she wants to be part of this family, she needs to help us. She can't just run around playing princess while the adults do the work. He leaned across the table. The power of attorney is in my name, Ruth, he said clearly. I control the assets. I decide when we sell. And if you make this difficult for me, if you embarrass me in front of Mr. Vale, I will have to make some hard decisions to protect the fund. Do you understand? You would kick Mom out? I whispered. You would really do that? I would do what is necessary to protect the investment, Gavin hissed. So stop crying and make the introduction. There it was, extortion, recorded in high definition. I looked at Adrian. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. He had heard it. The trap was sprung. But there was one last thing I needed to know. One last cord I needed to cut. I turned to my mother. She was sitting there, looking between Gavin and me. She had heard him threaten her home. She had heard him blackmail her daughter. Mom, I said, reaching out to touch her hand. Her skin was cold. Mom, did you hear him? He is using the house to threaten me. He is forcing me to use Adrian to help him. Please, tell him to stop. Tell him you want the house back. Darlene pulled her hand away. She didn't look at me. She looked at Gavin. She looked at his tuxedo, his confidence, the illusion of wealth he projected. She looked at Adrian, the ultimate prize. Then she looked at me with eyes that were completely empty of maternal instinct. Ruth, she said, her voice sharp and annoyed. Stop making a scene. Gavin knows what he's doing. If he needs you to make an introduction, just do it. Why do you always have to be so selfish? Selfish? I stared at her. Mom, he just said he would put you on the street. He is stressed, Darlene snapped. He is trying to build a future for us. For Sloan. For me. All you do is fix old broken things. Gavin is building something new. You should support him instead of trying to make him look bad. She picked up her fork and stabbed at her sea bass. Honestly, Ruth, she muttered, sometimes I wonder whose side you are on. You get a little taste of money and you think you are better than us. Just do what he asks and stop ruining dinner. The silence that followed that statement was absolute. It was not a silence of shock. It was a silence of clarity. I felt something inside me snap. It wasn't a loud break. It was quiet, like a thread finally giving way after years of tension. The hope that she would one day choose me, protect me, or even just see me. It was gone. It died right there, over a plate of $20 fish. I sat back in my chair. The trembling in my hands stopped. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated. I looked at Darlene Hanson. I didn't see my mother anymore. I saw a stranger, a foolish, greedy stranger who had just voluntarily walked into a burning building because she liked the warmth. Okay, I said. My voice was different now. It was dry. It was steady. It sounded like Adrian's. Okay, what? Gavin asked, looking smug. He thought he had won. He thought he had bullied me into submission one last time. Okay, I repeated. I understand exactly where we stand. I reached down and picked up my purse. I stopped the recording and saved the file. Then I placed the purse on the table. Adrian, I said, turning to him, I think Gavin is right. We should discuss business. Adrian smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had just seen the gate to the sheep pen left open. I agree, Adrian said. In fact, I think we should skip the main course. I have some documents upstairs that I think Gavin would be very interested to see, regarding his proprietary algorithm. Gavin's eyes lit up. Really? You want to look at the numbers tonight? Oh, absolutely, Adrian said. I think tonight is the perfect time to review everything. Don't you, Ruth? Yes, I said. I looked at Gavin, and then I looked at my mother. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel hurt. I felt nothing. It was a beautiful, liberating numbness. Let's go, I said. I wouldn't want to keep the genius waiting. I stood up. I didn't wait for them. I walked out of the private room, the silk of my dress rustling like a whisper against the floor. I left the girl who wanted her mother's love sitting in that chair. The woman who walked out was done negotiating. I was ready to close the deal. The corridor leading away from the private dining room was a tunnel of hushed opulence. The walls were lined with silk damask in a deep, blood-orange hue, and the sconces cast a dim amber light that was designed to flatter the wealthy but only made the shadows look deeper. I walked slowly, counting my steps. 1, 2, 3. I knew he was following me. I could hear his breathing. It was heavy, wet, and labored. The sound of a man who was carrying too much weight, both physically and in the lies he was juggling. I did not speed up. I did not turn around. I let him catch me. A hand clamped down on my upper arm. It was not a painful grip, but it was possessive. It was the grip of a man who believed he owned the object he was holding. "Hold on there, princess," Gavin said. I stopped and turned slowly. Gavin was standing too close, invading my personal space with the aggressive familiarity of a bully. His face was flushed from the wine, a chaotic map of red blotches across his cheeks and neck. His bow tie was crooked, listing to the left like a sinking ship. "What do you want, Gavin?" I asked, keeping my voice low and trembling. "Adrian is waiting for us. We need to go over the papers." "Forget the papers for a second," Gavin said, pushing me backward until my shoulder blades hit the wall. He blocked my path with his body, leaning one hand against the wallpaper next to my head. It was a classic intimidation tactic. He wanted me to feel small. He wanted me to remember that before I was the fiancée of a billionaire, I was just Ruth, the failure who lived in a garage. "We need to get our story straight before we go back in there," Gavin hissed. "I don't know what game you are playing with, Vale, but you are not going to screw this up for me." "I am not playing a game," I stammered, deliberately letting my eyes widen. I shrank back against the wall, hunching my shoulders. "I am just trying to help. You said you would take the house." "Damn right I will," Gavin said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "And I still can. You think because you are wearing a fancy dress that you are safe? I hold the deed. Ruth, I hold the pen." He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of stale alcohol and onions. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. "Tomorrow, before the auction, DeLuca is going to ask you to look at a few other pieces, private pieces, things he is thinking of selling to my fund." "Okay," I whispered. "One of them is a sapphire necklace," Gavin said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It is big, heavy, looks like the heart of the ocean." "I know the piece," I said softly. "The Midnight Star. It is a very complex stone." "It is a piece of glass. Ruth," Gavin said. "It is a high-grade synthetic composite. We had it made in a lab in Shenzhen 3 weeks ago." My heart hammered against my ribs, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. He was saying it. He was saying the quiet part out loud. "What?" I gasped, bringing my hand to my chest to ensure the microphone in my brooch was unobstructed. "You mean, it is a fake? You want me to authenticate a fake?" "I want you to tell DeLuca that it is the most magnificent, natural, unheated cashmere sapphire you have ever seen," Gavin commanded. "I want you to tell him that my fund is offering a fair price for it. We buy it for $200,000. We value it at $2 million on the books. And suddenly my asset sheet looks strong enough to secure the loan from Vale." "But that is fraud," I said, my voice shaking with feigned terror. "Gavin, that is a felony. If I sign an appraisal for a synthetic stone knowing it is fake, I could lose my license. I could go to jail." "You won't go to jail," Gavin scoffed. "You are nobody. If it blows up, we blame the lab. We blame an honest mistake, but it won't blow up. Not if you do your job. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. His fingers were damp. Listen to me. Ruth, you are going to do this, because if you don't, I make a call to the bank on Monday morning. The house, I whimpered. Please, Gavin. Mom loves that house. It is all she has. It is already gone. Ruth! Gavin laughed. A short, barking sound. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying seeing me beg. His ego was so inflated, he couldn't see the cliff he was standing on. What do you mean? I asked. You said you would sell it. You mean you haven't sold it yet? I already leveraged it for 100% of its value, Gavin bragged. I took every dime of equity out 6 months ago to pay for the initial setup of the fund, to pay for the office, to pay for the trips. You spent the house money on first-class tickets? I asked, horror in my voice. This time, the horror wasn't entirely acted. The scale of his selfishness was breathtaking. I invested it in image, Gavin corrected, and now I need this deal with Vale to plug the hole before the interest payment comes due next week. If I don't get Vale's money, the bank forecloses on Tuesday. Not Monday, Tuesday. He poked me in the chest with a thick finger. So you see, Mouse, you don't have a choice. You help me pass that glass necklace as a sapphire. You help me land Vale, and I pay off the mortgage. Mom keeps her garden. Everyone is happy. You refuse? The house is seized. Mom is homeless, and I tell her it is because her selfish daughter wouldn't help the family business. It was perfect. It was a complete, uncoerced confession of mortgage fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit forgery. I needed one more thing. I needed him to confirm he knew about the DeLuca emeralds. And the emeralds? I asked. The ones Adrian wants to buy? Are those yours too? Gavin smirked. He stepped back and adjusted his bow tie, looking at himself in the mirror on the opposite wall. Let us just say I have a very good relationship with the supplier, he said. Adrian pays $6 million. We split the profit. He gets a shiny green rock for his collection, and he never knows the difference. Everyone wins. He will know, I said. He is smart. He is a checkbook, Gavin said dismissively. He is just another rich idiot who wants to own things. He doesn't know stones. You know stones. That is why this works. You are the safety valve. He turned back to me, his expression hardening again. So, are we good? Or do I need to text Mom right now and tell her to start packing boxes? I looked at him. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. I looked at the fear behind his eyes that he was trying so hard to mask with aggression. He was a small, frantic man trying to play God with people's lives. I let out a long, shaky breath. I lowered my head. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Gavin, I will do it. Just don't hurt Mom. Good girl, Gavin said. He patted my cheek. It took every ounce of my self-control not to bite his hand. I knew you would come around. You always do what you are told eventually. He checked his watch. Now, fix your face. You look like a victim. We are going upstairs to close the biggest deal of my life. I want you smiling. I will smile, I said. Go on. He gestured down the hall. I need to use the restroom. I will meet you at the elevators. He turned and walked away, whistling a tuneless melody, swaggering slightly. He thought he had just secured his future. He thought he had just crushed me back into my box. I stood alone in the hallway. I reached into my purse and pulled out the phone Adrian had given me. The screen was glowing. Upload complete. File saved to secure cloud server. Sent to Adrian Vale. I tapped the screen. I saw the waveform of the audio file. Every word, every threat, every admission of guilt. It was all there, crisp and clear. Gavin hadn't just confessed to me. He had confessed to the cloud. He had confessed to the lawyers Adrian had on standby. He had confessed to the forensic accountants who were currently dismantling his life. I walked over to the mirror where Gavin had just admired himself. I looked at my reflection. The woman in the mirror was not shaking. She was not crying. Her eyes were dry and bright, burning with a cold, blue fire. The slate-gray dress looked like armor. The diamond brooch, the microphone, glittered innocently on my chest. I adjusted the strap of my dress. I smoothed a stray hair. "I will smile," I said to my reflection, repeating the promise I had made to Gavin. But it wouldn't be the smile of a compliant daughter. It would be the smile of the executioner as she pulls the lever. I turned and walked toward the elevators. My heels clicked against the floor. A steady, rhythmic countdown. The victim was dead. She had died at the airport in Seattle. The woman walking back to the dinner table was something else entirely, and she was hungry. The morning of the auction arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron. Rain lashed against the bulletproof windows of the penthouse suite, blurring the view of the Milan Cathedral into a gray smear. It was fitting weather for an execution. I stood in the center of the dressing room, surrounded by racks of couture, but my mind was focused on a much smaller object. Downstairs, in the secure holding room of the ballroom, the items for the charity auction were being catalogued. Item number 42, a sapphire and diamond necklace, donated by Cross Global Ventures. Gavin had officially submitted it an hour ago. He had signed the donor release forms. He had valued the piece at $2 million. He had walked right into the bear trap, and he had dragged my mother and sister in with him. "The item is in the viewing room," Adrian said. Walking into the room, he was already dressed in a charcoal suit, looking calm and lethal. "Sloane is currently down there. She insisted on creating content with the donation before it goes on the block." "She is taking photos with the evidence," I said, buttoning the cuffs of my white silk blouse. "She has no idea she is holding a grenade." "We can stop this now," Adrian said. He moved to the window, watching the rain. "We have the recording from last night. We have the forged deed to your mother's house. I can have the Polizia di Stato pick him up in the lobby right now. It would be clean, quiet." I looked at him in the mirror. Quiet is what Gavin relies on. Quiet is how he convinces my mother that he is just misunderstood or a victim of bad luck. If we arrest him quietly, he spins it. He tells Darlene that the jealous billionaire crushed his startup. She will believe him. She will visit him in prison and blame me. "So what do you want?" Adrian asked, turning to face me. "I want noise," I said. "I want to strip him of the one thing he values more than money, his credibility. I want to show the world, and my mother, exactly what he is, not with a police warrant, but with a loop." Adrian studied me for a long moment. Then, a slow, dark smile touched his lips. "You want to authenticate it on stage?" "I am the expert," I said. "It is my job." We took the private elevator down to the ballroom level. The air in the hallway was cool and smelled of floor wax. The security guard at the door of the viewing room nodded to Adrian and stepped aside. Inside, the room was bright, lit by harsh fluorescent lights designed to show every flaw in a gemstone. Tables were lined with velvet trays, antique tiaras, Art Deco brooches, loose diamonds. And there, in the center of the room, was my family. Sloane was holding the necklace. It was a massive thing, a heavy pendant hanging from a diamond choker. The center stone was a deep, velvety blue, the size of a pigeon's egg. "Okay, Mom, get the angle from above," Sloane commanded. She was posing with the necklace held up to her neck, pouting at her phone. "Title this $2 million drip. No, wait. Cross Global Ventures Charity Queen." Darlene was struggling to get the lighting right. "It is blurry, honey. The stone is too dark." "It is a midnight sapphire, Mom," Gavin said, leaning against a display case, looking smug. "It is supposed to be dark. That is the quality." I walked in. Actually, a cashmere sapphire should have a velvety texture, not a black extinction point. They all spun around. "Ruth," Gavin said, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second before he plastered it back on. "Here to admire the merchandise? I told you it was a beauty." He was testing me. He was reminding me of our agreement in the hallway. He expected me to nod and play along. I walked over to Sloane. "May I?" Sloane rolled her eyes but handed me the necklace. "Careful. It is worth more than your life." I took the necklace in my hands. It was heavy, too heavy. I pulled my loupe from my pocket, a Bolomo triplet loupe with 10 times magnification. I held the stone up to the light. It was good. I had to give them that. It was a very expensive flame fusion synthetic corundum. They had even introduced some chaotic inclusions to mimic natural growth lines. But under the magnification, the truth screamed at me. The growth lines were curved. Natural sapphire crystals grow in hexagonal structures. Their growth lines are straight and angular. Curved striae are the hallmark of a stone grown in a lab cylinder. Furthermore, there were gas bubbles, tiny microscopic spheres of trapped air. Nature does not make bubbles in corundum. Factories do. It was a piece of glass and chemistry, worth perhaps $200 in materials, set in a gold mount that probably cost another $1,000, and Gavin was about to sell it to a charity for $2 million, take the tax write-off, and use the inflated valuation to defraud Adrian's bank. "Well," Gavin asked, his eyes boring into mine, "what does the expert think? Magnificent, isn't it?" I lowered the loupe. I looked at Gavin. I saw the sweat on his forehead. I saw the desperate arrogance. "It is certainly distinctive," I said. "See?" Gavin turned to Darlene. "Even Ruth admits it. Distinctive. That means top tier." Sloane snatched the necklace back. "Okay, enough nerding out. I need to get a video of me putting it in the display case. It is symbolic." She walked over to the velvet podium designated for Lot 42. She placed the fake necklace on the bust with a flourish, treating it like a holy relic. She had no idea she was planting the evidence of her husband's crime in the spotlight. "Adrian," I said, turning to him, "I need a favor." "Anything," he replied. "I need a control," I said loud enough for Gavin to hear, but vague enough to confuse him. To truly appreciate a stone of this magnitude, one should compare it to others of its era. "Do we have access to the DeLuca vault?" "We do," Adrian said. "Good," I said. "I saw a brooch in the catalog. Lot 87, a small Victorian bar brooch with a natural cashmere sapphire. Can we have that brought up to the stage tonight, for educational purposes?" Gavin frowned. "Why do you need another stone? This one is the star of the show." "Contrast, Gavin," I said smoothly. "Contrast creates value. Comparing your modern piece to a small antique will only highlight the size of your donation." Gavin's ego took the bait immediately. "Right, yeah, good thinking. Show them how puny the old stuff is compared to what we are bringing." "Exactly," I said. I looked at the fake stone one last time. It glittered under the lights, cold and lifeless. It was a perfect metaphor for my family. Shiny on the outside, manufactured on the inside, and completely hollow. "We should go get ready," I said to Adrian. "The gala starts in 4 hours." As we walked out, leaving my family to high-five each other over their cleverness, Adrian leaned in close to me. "You are going to dissect him," he murmured. "Live on stage." "He asked for an appraisal," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I am just going to give him the most accurate appraisal of his life." "Are you sure about this?" Adrian asked. "Once you do this, there is no going back. Darlene will never forgive you for humiliating her golden boy." I stopped in the hallway. I thought about the phone call I had overheard in the bathroom earlier that morning. Darlene talking to her friend in Seattle. Oh yes, Ruth is here. She is tagging along. You know how she is. Always trying to ride on our coattails. But Gavin is the one making the real moves. She had already rewritten the story. Even with me engaged to a billionaire. Even with me saving them. She still saw me as the tag-along. She still saw Gavin as the hero. There was nothing left to save. The house was just wood and plaster. The family was just biology and bad habits. "I don't want forgiveness," I told Adrian. "I want freedom, and the only way to get free of people like them is to become too dangerous to touch." "Then let us go prepare the stage," Adrian said. We spent the next 3 hours with the legal team in the hotel conference room. It was a flurry of activity. The forensic accountants had finished mapping Gavin's Ponzi scheme. The documents were printed, notarized, and sealed. I sat at the head of the table, outlining the technical presentation. I requested a microscope with a camera feed connected to the ballroom's main projector screen. I requested the specific lighting setup. "You are treating this like a lecture," the head lawyer said, looking at me with amusement. "It is a lecture," I said. "The subject is how to spot a fraud." At 6 o'clock, the courier arrived with the control stone. It was a small, unassuming brooch from 1890. The sapphire in the center was tiny, barely 2 carats, but it held a soft, glowing blue fire that seemed to come from within. It was imperfect. It had a small silk inclusion, but it was real. It was honest. I held the real stone in one hand and looked at the photo of Gavin's fake in the catalog. Tonight, I wasn't just exposing a gemstone. I was exposing the lie that had defined my entire life, the lie that I was the worthless one, and they were the valuable ones. I put the brooch in my pocket. "It is time," Adrian said from the doorway. He was wearing a fresh tuxedo. He looked like a king who was about to watch a joust. "I am ready," I said. I didn't look in the mirror this time. I didn't need to check my reflection. I knew who I was. I was the person who knew the difference between a bubble and a crystal, between a price tag and true value. As we walked toward the ballroom, the sound of the orchestra drifted down the hall. It was Mozart, the Requiem. "A bit dramatic," Adrian noted. "No," I said, stepping into the light. "It is perfect." The ballroom was a cauldron of light and noise. Crystal chandeliers trembled overhead, vibrating with the energy of 300 of the wealthiest people in Europe. The air smelled of expensive champagne and the metallic tang of anxiety. My family was holding court near the stage. Sloane had positioned herself under the main spotlight, her phone raised high on a selfie stick. She was speaking rapidly into the microphone, her smile fixed and brittle. "We are literally moments away from the auction," Sloane narrated, her voice carrying over the low hum of the crowd. "My brother-in-law, Gavin Cross, has donated the centerpiece of the night, a $2 million sapphire. It is called the Midnight Star. We are so blessed to be able to give back." She panned the camera to Gavin. He was standing with his chest puffed out, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of scotch that he was drinking too fast. He looked like a man trying to convince himself he wasn't standing on a trapdoor. Darlene was hovering next to him, adjusting his bow tie every 30 seconds. She caught sight of me approaching with Adrian and immediately stiffened. Then, remembering who Adrian was, her face dissolved into a mask of desperate affection. "Ruthie," she called out, waving a manicured hand. "Over here. Come stand with the family for the photo op." She rushed toward me, arms open for a hug. "Oh, look at you," she gushed, loud enough for the nearby donors to hear. "My beautiful daughter, always so supportive of Gavin's success. I was just telling Lady Montgomery how proud I am of you for finally finding someone suitable." She reached for my arm. I stepped sideways. Her hands grasped at empty air. "Don't touch me," I said. My voice was low, audible only to her. Darlene blinked, her smile faltering. "Ruth, don't be like that. The camera is on." "I know," I said. "That is why you shouldn't touch me. You don't want to be attached to what is about to happen." "What?" Darlene frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before she could ask, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. Alessandro De Luca stepped up to the podium. The microphone feedback whined once, then settled. "Buonasera," De Luca said. "Welcome, friends. Tonight, we raise money for the preservation of our history, and we have many generous gifts, but one item has drawn particular attention." He gestured to the covered pedestal to his right. "The Midnight Star," De Luca announced. "Donated by Mr. Gavin Cross of Cross Global Ventures." The velvet cloth was whipped away. The fake necklace sat there, basking in the spotlight. It glittered with a dark, aggressive blue brilliance. The crowd applauded politely. Gavin beamed, stepping forward and waving as if he had just won an Oscar. He looked at me, his eyes wide and threatening. "Do your job," his look said. "Validate me." "However," De Luca continued, his voice smooth, "before we open the bidding at 500,000 euros, we have a special treat, We are honored to have one of the world's leading restoration experts with us tonight. She has kindly agreed to say a few words about the significance of this stone. He extended a hand toward me. Ms. Ruth Hanson. The spotlight swung through the room and hit me. It was blindingly bright. I felt the heat of it on my skin. Gavin stopped clapping. He looked confused. This wasn't part of the script he had written in his head. He wanted me to whisper to a few buyers, not take the stage. But he couldn't stop it now without making a scene. He forced a smile, nodding at me encouragingly, unaware that he was nodding at the executioner. I walked up the stairs to the stage. My legs felt like steel. I stood behind the podium, gripping the edges. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Adrian standing near the back, his arms crossed, watching me. I saw Sloane, her phone still recording, broadcasting this moment to her followers. "Thank you, Signor De Luca," I said into the microphone. My voice did not shake. "It is rare to see a stone of this magnitude." Gavin relaxed visibly. He gave a thumbs up from the floor. "Gemstones are like history books," I continued. "They tell a story. They tell us about the earth they came from. They tell us about the pressure, the heat, and the time it took to create them. And sometimes, if we look closely enough, they tell us lies." The room went very quiet. Gavin's smile vanished. "I have asked for a microscope camera to be set up," I said, gesturing to the tech crew, "because a sapphire valued at $2 million deserves to be seen in all its glory. I want to show you exactly what makes this stone unique." I walked over to the pedestal. I picked up the heavy necklace. I placed the center stone under the lens of the digital microscope that had been prepared. Behind me, a giant projection screen descended from the ceiling. The image of the stone appeared, magnified 50 times. "First," I said, pointing to the screen, "let us look at the growth lines." On the giant screen, curved bands of color swept across the blue field like ripples in a pond. "Nature is geometric," I explained, my voice echoing in the silent hall. "Natural corundum grows in hexagonal crystals. The growth lines are always straight, angular, sharp." I traced the curve on the screen with a laser pointer. "These lines are curved," I said. "Curved striae only occur when a stone is grown in a boule, rotating in a laboratory cylinder. This stone was not born in the earth. It was grown in a factory." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Ruth!" Gavin shouted from the floor. His voice was high and panicked. "What are you doing? The lighting is bad. You are looking at it wrong." "Second," I ignored him, increasing the magnification to 80 times. "Let us look at the clarity." I focused on a cluster of tiny dark spots near the girdle of the stone. In a natural sapphire, we look for silk, tiny needles of rutile that prove the stone formed over millions of years, I said. But here, we see something else. The screen showed perfect, spherical black dots. "Bubbles," I said. "Gas bubbles. Trapped air. Nature does not trap gas bubbles in sapphire crystal, but molten glass and synthetic melt does." The murmur turned into a gasp. "And finally," I said, pulling the control stone, the small Victorian brooch, from my pocket. I placed it under the scope next to the giant necklace. The difference was shocking. The small natural stone looked messy, complex, and alive with internal fire. The giant necklace looked flat, sterile, and uniform. "On the left," I said, "is a natural sapphire from 1890. On the right is a flame fusion synthetic worth approximately $200. "Liar!" Gavin screamed. He lunged forward, shoving a waiter aside. "She is lying! She is crazy! She is trying to ruin me because she is jealous!" He ran toward the stairs. Sloane was still filming, her mouth hanging open, capturing her husband's meltdown in high definition. Darlene was frozen, clutching her purse to her chest, looking between the screen and Gavin with horror dawning on her face. Gavin reached the first step of the stage. Adrian stepped out from the shadows. He didn't run. He just moved with efficient, brutal speed. He stepped in front of Gavin and placed a hand on his chest. It looked like a gentle gesture, but Gavin stopped as if he had hit a concrete wall. Sit down. Mr. Cross? Adrian said. His voice was not loud, but it carried to the back of the room. Get out of my way, Gavin spat, his face purple. That bitch is lying. That is a $2 million asset. I have the appraisal. I have the paperwork. You have a forgery, I said from the podium, and you have an attempted fraud. I looked down at him. I looked down at the man who had canceled my ticket, who had stolen my passport, who had mocked me for being poor. This is not just a fake stone, I said to the crowd. This is an attempt to defraud this charity and use the inflated valuation to secure bank loans. I cannot, in good conscience, authenticate this. In fact, as a licensed appraiser, I am legally obligated to report this. I turned to DeLuca. Signor DeLuca, I said, I formally request that this item be seized for evidence, and I suggest you call the Guardia di Finanza. There has been a crime committed here tonight. No! Darlene shrieked. She finally moved, running toward Gavin. Ruth, stop! What are you doing? You are destroying the family. Gavin, tell them. Tell them it is real. Gavin looked at Darlene. He looked at the crowd, who were now staring at him with a mixture of disgust and amusement. He looked at the screen, where his $1 million lie was projected 10 feet high. He crumbled. I didn't know, Gavin stammered, backing away from Adrian. I was scammed. The dealer told me it was real. I am a victim here. You signed the donor form, I said cold. You signed the valuation, and I have a recording of you telling me last night that it was a fake, and that you would sell my mother's house if I didn't lie for you. The silence that followed was absolute. Darlene stopped running. She stood 5 feet from Gavin. She looked at him. You knew? I did it for us, Gavin yelled, pointing a shaking finger at her. To pay for your lifestyle. Darlene, to pay for your first-class tickets. You think money grows on trees? I had to do it. Sloane lowered her phone. The live stream had ended. The illusion was dead. I stood on the stage, looking down at the wreckage. I felt no joy. I felt no sadness. I just felt clean. The truth was a scalpel, and I had finally cut out the rot. Security, DeLuca said, his voice icy. Please escort Mr. Cross to the office. The police are on their way. 2 large men in black suits moved toward Gavin. He didn't fight. He slumped, all the hot air leaving him at once, leaving behind just a small, sweaty man in a rented tuxedo. I picked up the fake necklace. I walked down the stairs. I walked past Gavin, who wouldn't look at me. I walked past Sloane, who was crying silently. I stopped in front of my mother. Darlene looked at me. Her eyes were red. She looked old. Ruth, she whispered. My house? He said he spent the money. He did, I said. He spent it all. What am I going to do? She wailed, grabbing my hand. Ruthie, you have to help me. You are with Mr. Vale. You have money now. You can fix this. You always fix it. I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had pushed me away 5 minutes ago. I gently, firmly, peeled her fingers off my skin. No, Mom, I said. I restore things that have value. I don't fix things that are designed to break. I turned my back on her. I walked toward Adrian, who was waiting for me with a look of reverence. The crowd parted for me. I wasn't the poor relation anymore. I wasn't the baggage. I was the one holding the diamond. Take me home, I said to Adrian. Not yet, Adrian said, offering me his arm. The police need a statement. And then we settle the debt. The arrival of the Guardia di Finanza was not dramatic. It was surgical. There were no sirens. Just 4 officers in dark uniforms moving through the ballroom with the efficiency of a tide coming in. They did not ask for permission. They simply surrounded Gavin Cross. The music had stopped. The crowd watched in a silence that felt heavier than the crystal chandeliers overhead. Signor Cross? The lead officer asked. It was not a question. We have a warrant for your detention regarding allegations of international wire fraud, forgery of financial instruments, and attempted grand larceny. Gavin looked at the officers, then he looked at me. His face was gray, the color of old ash. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to spin one last lie, to blame the lighting or the microscope, but no sound came out. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The sound was sharp, final, and satisfying. "Wait!" Darlene cried, rushing forward. Her voice cracked, echoing painfully in the silent room. "You can't take him. He is an American citizen. This is a misunderstanding. He is a businessman." "He is a con artist, madam," the officer said coldly, "and if you continue to interfere, we will have to inquire about your involvement in his shell companies." Darlene froze. The threat of personal consequence paralyzed her maternal instinct instantly. She stepped back, covering her mouth with her hands. They marched Gavin out. He slumped between the officers, his feet dragging on the marble floor. He didn't look at Sloane. He didn't look at Darlene. He stared at the floor. A man whose entire existence had been a reflection in a mirror that just shattered. The ballroom doors closed behind him. I stood at the bottom of the stage stairs. Adrian was beside me, holding a thick leather folder. Sloane was sitting on a velvet bench nearby, her face buried in her hands, her phone lying dark and useless on the cushion beside her. "Well," Adrian said, his voice low, "that concludes the entertainment for the evening." Darlene turned to me. Her eyes were wide, frantic, searching for a lifeline. She looked at Adrian's tuxedo, then at my face. "Ruth," she whispered, "what do we do? We have nowhere to go. Gavin booked the return flights. He booked the hostel. If his accounts are frozen—" "Then you are stranded," I said. "You have to help us," Sloane sobbed, looking up. Her mascara was running in dark streaks down her cheeks. "You are rich now. You are marrying him. You can fly us home on the jet. You can't just leave your family in Italy." "I am not marrying him," I said. Sloane blinked. Darlene stopped crying. "What?" Darlene asked. "It was a job. Mother," I said calmly. "I was hired to authenticate a fraud. The engagement was a cover, a lie, just like Gavin's investment fund." Darlene looked at Adrian. He didn't deny it. He just watched me with a look of intense respect. "So," Darlene's voice trembled, "so you don't have the money? You are just Ruth again?" "I am just Ruth," I agreed. "But there is one difference." I reached out and took the leather folder from Adrian's hand. It was heavy. "The house," Darlene said, her voice rising in panic. "Gavin said the house was gone. He said the bank would take it on Tuesday." "The bank sold the debt yesterday," I said. "It was a distressed asset, a risky loan with bad collateral. They were happy to unload it for cash." "Who bought it?" Darlene asked. She looked at Adrian. "Did you buy it? Mr. Vale? Oh, thank God. You are a good man. You won't throw an old woman onto the street, will you?" Adrian smiled, but it was a cold smile. "I did not buy it, Mrs. Hanson. I merely facilitated the transaction. I advanced the funds against a future payment." "Then who?" "I did," I said. Darlene stared at me. "You?" "I used my fee for this job," I said, "plus an advance on 3 future restoration commissions for the DeLuca family. I bought the note. Mom, I own the debt. And since the terms Gavin signed were predatory, I have the right to foreclose immediately upon default." I opened the folder. The deed was there. My name was typed clearly at the bottom. Ruth Hanson. Darlene let out a breath, a laugh bubbling up that sounded hysterical. "So it stays in the family. Oh, Ruthie, you scared me. I thought we were lost. So we just go home, and we figure this out. We can put Gavin behind us. Sloane can move back into her old room, and—" "No," I said. The word cut through her relief like a knife. "No?" Darlene asked. "You signed the house away," I said. "You signed it to a man who promised you gold, and you didn't care that he stole my passport to do it. You didn't care that he humiliated me. You were ready to let me rot in Seattle so you could have a first-class seat." "I was manipulated," Darlene cried. "He tricked me." "You wanted to be tricked," I corrected her, "because the lie made you feel special. and I made you feel ordinary. I closed the folder. I am not forgiving you. Mom, not today. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness without change is just permission to hurt me again. So you are kicking me out? Darlene whispered. Your own mother? No, I said. I am offering you a tenancy agreement. I pulled a document from the back of the folder and held it out. You can live in the house, but the title stays in my name. You will pay rent. It will be fair market value. If you can't afford it, you will get a job. Sloane can live there too, but she pays her share. And Gavin? I looked at Sloane. If Gavin ever steps foot on the property, if he even parks a car in the driveway, the lease is void, and you are both evicted within 24 hours. Those are the terms. Darlene looked at the paper. She looked at me. She saw something she had never seen before. She didn't see her daughter. She saw a landlord. She saw a woman who knew her worth to the penny. You have changed, Darlene said bitterly. You are hard now. I am restored, I said. I stripped away the damage. I handed her a small card. This is for a hotel near the airport. It is prepaid for 2 nights. Economy tickets to Seattle are in your email. Go. Darlene took the card. She didn't hug me. She didn't say thank you. She grabbed Sloane's arm, and they walked away, heading toward the exit, smaller and grayer than they had ever looked. I watched them go. I felt a great weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't happiness. It was peace. You were tough, Adrian said softly. I had to be, I replied. We walked out onto the balcony. The rain had stopped. The air over Milan was crisp and clean. I have a confession, Adrian said, leaning against the stone railing. Oh? The lie I told you at the airport, he said. When I said I needed a fiancé to get into the auction. I figured that was an exaggeration, I said. You are Adrian Vale. You can walk in anywhere. True, he admitted. I didn't need a fiancé, and I didn't even really need an appraiser. I knew the necklace was fake. I knew Gavin was a fraud. I looked at him. Then why did you bring me? Because I saw you standing in that terminal, Adrian said. I saw a woman who was being broken by people who didn't deserve her, and I wanted to see what would happen if someone handed her a hammer. He looked at me, his gray eyes warm for the first time. I lied to get you on the plane, he said. But everything I said about your talent, that was the truth. I looked out at the city lights. There are 2 kinds of lies. Adrian, I said. Gavin's lie was designed to bury me. Your lie. It dug me out. I touched the diamond brooch on my chest. The one I had earned. The one that symbolized the new life I had just signed for. Thank you, I said. So, Adrian asked, what now? Back to the studio in the garage? No, I said. The garage is for storage. I think I'm going to expand. DeLuca offered me a contract for his tapestries, and I have a house to manage. I turned and walked back toward the light of the ballroom. I didn't look back at the dark streets where my family was scrambling for a taxi. I walked forward, into a future that belonged to me, 100%, free and clear. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment below with your city or country so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed seeing justice served cold, please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who need a little reminder that sometimes the best revenge is simply owning your own value.